Hey guys, and welcome back to the Modern Housewife podcast. In today's episode, I am super excited to bring to you guys 7 things I've changed my mind on since becoming a mom over 6 years ago. So for those of you guys who might be new, there might be one of you in there. Since I've just started the podcast, I have 3 kids, ages 6, 4, and a baby. Well, he just turned 2, so he's a baby in my eyes, but a 2-year-old. And so obviously, I am not a veteran mom with like teenagers or kids that are out of the house, but as you can imagine, 6 years, child rearing years, it really throws you for a loop. I mean, for those of my OG followers that followed me over 6 years ago, you guys have seen me go through what I felt like mentally at the time was the ringer in motherhood. I definitely had like the woe is me attitude, and I was navigating like which parenting style do I attach myself to? And I put a lot of pressure on myself to do things like breastfeeding 100%, which came extremely difficult and didn't happen with my first child. Also, I went from a person that was really into not having your kids sleep with you to someone that sleeps with nearly all my kids at some point in the night now. And so I've totally changed my ideas, or I guess my mind, on what being a mother means for me. And so I'm going to talk through those things with you guys today. We're going to also talk about things like marriage and navigating marriage with little kids, and things I've changed my mind on. So let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, so before we get into it, I know this is cliche, but I just want to say a huge thank you to any of you guys who have left reviews on Apple Podcasts. I never honestly thought that I was going to start a podcast. I've always wanted to, but it just felt like so out of reach because our life is so full. But I've been loving doing these episodes. I love your guys' feedback. It's a place where I feel like I can talk super candidly. One of my last podcasts, like the homeschool one, definitely ruffled some feathers when I chopped it into a reel because it wasn't put into full context. But for those of you guys who listen to the homeschool podcast specifically, you are so supportive. And I don't know, I feel like my true fans watch or listen to the podcast. So thank you guys so much. And if you like the podcast moving forward, and if you want to leave a review, that would mean the absolute world to me. So thank you guys so much, seriously, because I took a huge break from social media over the last 2 years to, run this other business with my husband. And last year, fun fact, I didn't have Instagram on my phone for like 5 or 6 months. So I wasn't even on social media. I mean, I was on it, but a lot of the stuff was posted through my assistant, like through her iPhone. And so anyways, it's just like wild to actually be posting something consistently for the first time in years, maybe even almost 3 years. I don't know. So thank you guys so much, seriously, for sticking with me. And I was a ghost. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the first thing I've changed my mind on. So the very first thing for me, and looking back at like my old vlogs on my mom channel, for those of you guys who have watched it that long, which seriously props if you have, is laughable looking at myself. I cringe. It's very tempting to unlist or private a lot of videos because if you guys watched me, I was so naive, really immature. I had my firstborn I got pregnant when I was 23 years old, which a lot of 23-year-olds are a lot more mature than I was, but coming fresh out of college, I just wasn't. So anyways, I put a lot of unnecessary pressure on myself to be like the best mom ever, like any other mom. I'm not special in that way. And so my first thing that I've changed my mind on is subscribing to a certain type of parenting. So I really was the type of person 6 years ago that I think a lot of people are like this just in general, but I was really interested in labeling things for myself. And I think it was because I felt so lost in my life as getting pregnant unexpectedly at 23 years old. And being so immature myself, I just felt lost. I had no friends at all. My friends were still out partying and doing all this. They weren't even married, and I was married and pregnant. And so I felt so alone, so lost. I wouldn't say depressed, but definitely down in the dumps. I was so thankful and excited for the baby, my firstborn Annabelle, obviously, and things come full circle. But at the time, it was a huge shock. And so I just felt comfort in labeling things for myself. And so when I was pregnant, I would start putting labels on what I felt was a good mom. And so when I was pregnant, I told myself I was never going to co-sleep, or I was never going to bottle feed. And this is how always happens with every mom, right? Or I will never have a C-section. I want a vaginal delivery only. And you realize that through experience, those labels, they literally and this is what I think now, not everybody thinks this, they'll label themselves as a gentle parenter, and they're like, take it to the grave, or they'll label themselves as an attachment parenter, whatever it's called. And so that's what I subscribe to. And so when I was pregnant, I said all these things, I'm not going to sleep with the baby. She'll be in her crib, because I saw my sister co-sleeping. It looked like a hot mess. And now it's like, totally different. And then when I had my baby and when she was born, I started labeling the opposite direction. And so I just felt like, I don't know, more secure and more in control with putting a label on certain things, because I felt pride in what I was doing. And I felt like, okay, I'm with these group of women online that all think this way, that have this philosophy for parenting or marriage or child rearing or breastfeeding, fed is best, or whatever, the breast is best, whatever the thing is, And so I felt like secure in that, because I knew no one in my life with tiny kids other than my own sister. And she lived in Tennessee, so far away. And she's also 10 years older than me. So yeah, it was isolating. And so I love the labels. Now looking back, like subscribing to a certain type of parenting isn't always best for me. Okay. So I wouldn't call myself any type of parenter. I wouldn't call myself a gentle parenter, because I think a lot of people think that is something that it's not. So I wouldn't call myself that. Wouldn't call myself an attachment parenter, because I called myself that for so long. And I would really think that, not sleeping with your kid or sleep training was not right. It was wrong. I don't think that because you choose a certain path, your kid's going to turn out any better or any worse. That's what I really think. So many kids come from different experiences, different backgrounds. A lot of my friends who were sleep trained, they love their mom. And so the attachment parenters like to say that you're going to resent your parents when you're older and you're not even going to know it. It's like, there's no way, So anyways, the first thing is subscribing to a certain type of parenting. I read a ton of parenting books and I take a little bit from each book. That's why I'm so hesitant to refer parenting books, because someone will cling to one idea in the book that I don't necessarily subscribe to, and they'll pinpoint and say, this is wrong, Haley, what you're doing, but I don't even look at that part of the book. So yeah, it's very tricky, and I take what what makes sense for our family. So the second thing that I changed my mind on, I've already kind of mentioned, but if you co-sleep, you'll have a bad marriage. So this is something that I always assumed, because like I said, I saw my sister who's 10 years older co-sleeping. They don't have a bad marriage at all. They love each other and they've been together forever. But when you don't co-sleep, or especially when you don't have kids and you see another family co-sleeping, it is less structured. I'm not going to lie. It really is. It looks so much, there's just so much more, I don't know. It seems like peace in a family where the parent just lays the child in bed and it goes right to sleep, and the parents get to have this cozy relationship when the kid's asleep, and it would appear that the parents have a stronger bond. But I just found that is not the case. Okay, so before, like I said, my firstborn was born, I was so against co-sleeping, because I thought that it meant you won't have time for your spouse. Nowadays, we have a stronger relationship than ever. We run a business together. We homeschool together, obviously me and my spouse, and we co-sleep. So what our family looks like, and it is a hot mess, but it's just the norm for us. And I think I was trying to go against the things that I liked when I was raised for different reasons, but I co-slept with my mom. She was a night nurse for a lot of the years that I was born. And so she'd come home and sleep with me because she missed me. And so I co-slept with my mom. I sometimes slept with my dad, in the same bed, and our family, I don't know, there's no strict boundaries there. And we loved it. We have a very close relationship, still do. And so nowadays I see that and I'm like, yeah, there's nothing wrong with co-sleeping if you can still make time for your marriage, So that is one thing a lot of people will say, and they'll condemn it for thinking that you won't have time for your spouse. So what it looks like right now in our household is there's structure to the chaos. So just in case you guys are interested, how it works is, because I get this question all the time for the last 6 years. How do you make time for your husband if you co-sleep? Or how do you get away from a breastfeeding baby? So, because I breastfeed my babies to sleep until they turn 2, and then I wean them so far. Although Oliver is 2 and he has not weaned. He's so cute. I don't know. So we'll see, maybe 2.5. And so this is how it works. So I put the 2 girls to sleep and I lay with them. Okay. So it takes about an hour for the whole shebang. And it used to really irk me, but now I realize they're growing so fast and I don't mind. So I read for 30 to 45 minutes sometimes. I tell a story. I sing a song. We say a prayer. I lay there for probably And I only really do this for my 4-year-old because she's so attached to me and I don't mind. So I lay there for maybe 15 minutes, pondering life, trying to meditate. And they sleep together in one bed. And then I ninja roll away. My 6-year-old doesn't care if I'm there or not. She's more independent, obviously. And then I go get the baby. And this is when my husband, Doug, is playing with our 2-year-old. And so I breastfeed him to sleep. And then I ninja roll away after maybe it takes extreme patience, I'm not gonna lie, 15 to 20 minutes or maybe less, I don't know. And then I hang out with Doug. And so we have plenty of time to hang out. It's probably 9 o'clock though, if I'm gonna be real. It's not like I can lay my kids down at 7 and have hours to myself, but it's just what we like. And then so in the middle of the night, or actually when we're done hanging out, in any of the other rooms in the house, Doug will, my husband, he will move Scarlett to my bedroom and he will go to sleep with Annabelle. And so that sounds so weird. So he goes to sleep with our 6-year-old. That sounds so weird to some people. The only reason we do that is because we have a 3-bedroom house and this room right here is one of the bedrooms, our filming room. And so it's kind of I don't know, a mixed bag in our house. We don't have a lot of space. I'd like another bedroom. That's why we're moving next year, hopefully. And so that it won't be like that. But yeah, that's just what we like. My 4-year-old craves attention with me. And so I don't mind her sleeping by me. And we still have a really good marriage. It doesn't matter. Things are going to have to totally shift when our fourth is born though, because I have to now find a new place to sleep with the newborn by myself. Because I do co-sleep with the newborn, but I have to sleep with the baby by myself with no other children for the first month to 2, because they just scream throughout the whole night and they just randomly wake up and they wake everybody up. So we'll have to figure that out. But that's it sounds crazy, but a lot of people, they'll make these assumptions based off of what they believe to be true, which we'll talk about in a minute. And they'll say, well, each kid has to have their own room for there to be peace in the house. I need a bigger house. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I need the kids to have their own space. I think we don't need any of that. We just choose to be happy with our circumstances. It hasn't always been like this. I have been miserable laying with the girls in certain phases of life because there's more friction with me and my eldest sometimes because she's more sassy, has more of an opinion about things. And so, or she stopped taking naps. So she's really cranky at bedtime. You guys know the whole shebang if you have toddlers and younger kids, but that is what works for us. And I've learned that looking at myself before kids, this looks like insanity. But I love it and I cherish it. And I could never be open to this type of lifestyle, which is more natural to us and Doug as well, if I labeled myself as such, or as something that went against it and felt like it was bad for doing something that other people don't like. Okay, so that's the second one. The third one is a huge one. Now this is, I wouldn't say it's controversial. It feels like it definitely should not be, but it is on Instagram specifically. So I did get in the Instagram app. That's why I've been posting more than ever if you guys have seen it. This last month for the first time in a long time. So it's really addicting. I got to get rid of it. I'm trying to get a light phone without the internet and social media. But anyways, that's a side note. So I've been on looking at Instagram Reels lately. There are so many Reels for motherhood accounts that just love to put down the dad. They love it. I don't know what's going on. And all of these Reels go massively viral, basically saying that this idea that moms have it harder than dads. So I used to think this too. It's a victim mentality. I've talked about it on my motherhood account. And when I talk about it, people absolutely come for me. They don't like it because it makes them reflect, I think. I don't know why. I just think it's so much easier to wallow in your self-pity, which I've been here. This is why it's something I regret, right? Or something I've changed my mind on, than take ownership for your emotions and your reactions. So right when I had my firstborn, Annabelle, I, like I said, was the woe is me mom. And you can look back at the titles of my videos, my vlogs back then. It's being a mom is so hard. There's so much laundry. It's it's literally a joke because I had one kid. But I used to think man, my husband has it easier. And I would never necessarily resent him because I think a lot of moms really start resenting. Well, they could resent their spouse with 1 kid or 5, it doesn't really matter. So their mindset and what's going on in the house, obviously. But I wasn't necessarily resentful, but I was he just gets to go to work, eat his lunch in peace. Oftentimes he'd obviously come home for lunch. If you guys watched us, which I'm thankful for, and I have to clean and feed this baby and breastfeed. And I don't feel like myself, and my identity is lost, and all the things that are preached at you from these woe is me moms. And nowadays I do not even go there in my mind, because first off, we do everything together. So it's easy for me to say that. I totally get that. But I do not think that moms have it harder than dads at all, because I personally would not, which is laughable again, because I have been the breadwinner in our family, so I know what it's like. But being someone that has to lead the family, and really a lot of times for dads, like take control of the finances, take control of the vision for the family, and also try and climb the corporate ladder oftentimes is extremely stressful. And I would say that sometimes it's harder than raising kids. There's a lot of other things to it that I feel like it's harder with, but yes, raising kids is physically like demanding. So is sitting in an office all day, obviously, but I would say that doing a man's job, now this is where it gets controversial, it's more of a burden, in my opinion. I wouldn't wish it on somebody. I wouldn't wish it on a mom, And so the fact that like moms have to work full time and raise kids, like that's where people get really bent out of shape. But that's like the similar thing, So I don't think that moms have it harder than dads, unless you're like a single mom. That's like a different thing. But generally I don't. And I don't think even like adopting that belief is going to serve you in your life. And I believe this is what we're meant to do. All right, guys, I just had to interject here. I'm watching the podcast, and okay, like I know that there's a million different disclaimers I could give for this, and I already gave one sort of, but I'm sure that there are women out there that are like, I have it harder than my husband. He doesn't help. You don't understand. Or I have it harder than my husband because, like I said in the podcast, I work full time. Then I'm expected to come home, take care of all these kids. And that's kind of like what all these reels that I'm talking about are preaching. I am just talking about generally men and women. I know that everyone is in a different circumstance. You could look at my life and judge it and think she does not have it harder. He has it harder, or, Doug has it harder and she does it, like whatever. And a lot of people tell me I'm blessed with how much help I get. They don't know that I've created a lot of this type of lifestyle, which I'm going to talk about actually in next week's episode, based off of what expectation I have for my own life. And so I think that you can, shift your mindset to just better serve you. That's really all I'm saying, So if you are working like full time, which I've done some crazy things I don't talk about as far as like working, managing kids, and people don't know everything about my life, obviously. Working into the night for like years and years and years till like 12 o'clock, 1 a.m., trying to do different things, and raising kids and cleaning and doing all these things. So budgeting and financial things. So a lot of people might see my life and they might think, well, it's easy for her to say, like she doesn't do what I do, but you really don't know, And so my point here is shifting your mindset to something that is going to put you in control of your life is the point that I'm making, and like blaming your circumstances or blaming your husband and the lack of support that he does, it doesn't do much, you just have to do your best. So that's all I'm trying to say. I hope that my words aren't twisted. I'm new at podcasting. I can't cover all my bases, but I hope you guys understand what I'm saying. Okay, so the fourth thing that I have learned is going to sound kind of weird. Change my mind on the fact that you should just marry for love. Okay, so when I was a kid and when I was even like in college, I thought that I had these like romantic ideas about a spouse. Then what happened is, obviously I don't regret marrying Doug, thank gosh. Like God bless me, because I didn't know the first thing about necessarily choosing the right partner with the right values. And a lot of you guys know that I came into the marriage with a Christian background. I wasn't necessarily practicing it and going to church or anything, reading my Bible, definitely not in college. But I came into the relationship with a very heavy Christian influence, going to private school and church my whole life. Doug came from a background of the people like in, Santa Cruz, California, who are kind of more definitely laid back, definitely like no opinion on any of that. So not necessarily atheist, but didn't really have a strong opinion at all. And so what I should have done was not necessarily, like I said, I don't regret this. I hope you guys don't take this the wrong way, because it's worked out now. We all go to church as a family, read the Bible as a family. Thankfully, God's blessed me in, softening his heart towards those things. But I shouldn't have just looked for love in like a person. And this is what I'm going to tell my kids. And this is exactly what Doug's going to tell our kids as well is, when you look to marry a spouse, you have to ask yourself, like, do they have the same values that you want to instill in your kids? Luckily, Doug has those things, like literally luckily, like we are blessed from God because, like I said, we married for love and not necessarily for religious values, But that's not something that I'm going to encourage my kids to do because there's so much more to parenting, child rearing, and marriage than just being in love with somebody, So that is something that I have changed my mind on. Okay. Hey guys, I interrupt this podcast to let you know that we have a brand new YouTube masterclass. So this masterclass training is about a little over an hour long, and it's a free online training. You guys just have to register for a spot. I'll leave the link down below, and you can learn the ins and outs of everything I've learned from being on YouTube for nearly a decade. So all the mistakes, all the failures, and everything that can basically turn a new YouTuber into a full-time YouTuber within 6 months or less. I know that sounds crazy because a lot of you guys have probably posted on YouTube, or maybe some of you guys, for over 6 months and you're nowhere near full-time, but it's totally possible with the right mindset, the right strategies, and the right income streams, and also the right growth plan. Okay, so I'm going to talk about how to go viral on YouTube, how to turn it into a full-time business, and I'll do that all throughout this full training. So I will leave the link down below for where you guys can sign up for your time slot to watch that. If you have any questions, let me know, and let's go ahead and get back into the podcast. So the fifth thing is that you can only be a happy mom in air quotes for those of you guys who are listening, if you have me time. Okay, so this is something that, again, is like really all over social media. People, they will say things, and I said the same thing, okay? Like, I lost my identity when I had kids. I don't know who I am. I need to go get a mani-pedi in a Starbucks to feel better about myself. There's nothing necessarily wrong with like me time. Like I think I feel so much more refreshed, rejuvenated, even if I walk around the block like by myself. If there's not a kid that's making sounds, like noise sometimes kills me when it's been a long day, like whining, whatever, crying, asking for things, like it gets a lot. And so taking time for yourself, that's not what I'm like, shaming by any means. But I do now believe and have changed my mindset to where happiness is a choice. And I wrote this down. Sometimes there are seasons of life where taking time for yourself, it's just not an option. Okay. So you still have to choose contentment and happiness and joy. And so that's what I should have known as a first and even second time mom. I was like a victim to everything. I was a victim to having to work this certain job. I was a victim to having to live in a place that was so expensive, or I was a victim to having little kids that needed me all the time, victim to having a messy house. And I felt like I couldn't gain control over my life. And so that, I could if I had more time, if I had more time for me, if I had more time for my mental state, like et cetera, et cetera. So if I could go back in time to talk to that person who felt like, woe is me all the time, I would say, like, happiness is a choice, and you're choosing to look for the negative in everything, And so I don't think that you have to have self-care time to be happy and a content mom. It does help, but it's not something that it's not required, it's a choice. It helps, obviously, but you can still choose to be that mom that your kids want to be around. Okay, so the sixth thing. And also, let me just say as a caveat to that, like, definitely, I still like to have self-care. I rarely get it because of the season of life that we're in. We're in a very small house. We run a business together. We're just learning homeschooling. And like one day I will have more of that, but right now I choose not to have that. And I still have to choose happiness even when it's hard. Okay. So the sixth thing is a big one. This is something that I have just adopted or just like changed my mind on probably within the last year. Okay. So, and this is me being super frank with you guys. So I changed my mind on the fact that the idea that having any more kids after, I just put 3 just because 3 is like the normal kid amount in California. And in most places, if you have 4, 5, 6, you're labeled like, I don't know what you're labeled, but you're looked at kind of strange at the grocery store. People start asking questions. We told our neighbor we're having 4. So this happened after 3, right? The 3rd, everyone's like, congrats. Now we tell people that we like semi-know that are acquaintances, oh, we're having 4. And like, usually it's older people, they'll say, you know how babies are made, right? Like they're not congratulatory. They're like, what are you doing? Like you're crazy, you know? And so anyways, I changed my mind on the fact that any more kids than 3, like an oops baby, you know, or they are going to be neglected. And so when I say neglected, I used to see huge families. This is me being, real, raw as ever. I used to see big families, like anything after maybe not 4, maybe like 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you know? And I used to think there's no way the parents have time for that many kids. I used to think that because I didn't know any families literally ever in my life that had 4 kids. Like 3 was max. And that was like a lot of kids. And so actually what changed my mind was homeschooling. And we go to like the Charlotte Mason Co-op twice a week. We do like Friday field trips, hikes, and different things. And these moms will bring like 6 and 7 kids. Most of the parents still have like 2 or 3 kids, but there are big families, 5 and up kids. And they are so happy. They are so content. The kids are, you can just tell they are not like screaming or dying for attention from their parents. Like you can tell some kids like get no attention because they just climbing all over the mom and disrespectful, like whatever the thing is. You can only assume, you know. So I see these big families and the kids are just, they look happy. Now, I don't know the circumstance. I don't know if they get a lot of attention, but I meet the moms, I meet the kids, I meet their families, the dads, and they make time for these kids. The moms, they do not. The moms of large families, this is what has really shifted my mindset. They really do not subscribe to the victim mentality, obviously, because they can't with a bunch of kids. Like I think most people wouldn't, because you could stop having kids if you wanted, you know? And so because of that, they are like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do this to the best of my abilities. It's like what God has blessed me with. You know, this is my purpose on earth. This is kind of the mentality they have, which I love. And so they've got their system down pat. You know, they're experts on time management. They're experts on, you know, rotating the one-to-one time with the kids, putting it on the calendar. Like they have to be super structured and routine. And a lot of routines in their life. And so I admire that so much because I don't even do that with my own life. And I only have 3 kids and some of these moms have like 6, 7, or 8, you know? So if they can do it, I can do it. And so I love that. It's a choice to not give to your children and fill their cup. You know, you have to schedule it in sometimes, even though it's hard. Okay. So the 7th thing that I've changed my mind on is I kind of mentioned this, but you need a large house or a bigger car or more money, or you need a dual income. Or even on the flip side, you need one parent to stay at home all the time to, you know, have a big family. So again, this like changed my mind since seeing and being exposed to so many different bigger families, 3 kids and up that are homeschooled and even not. And so I have learned that all of those are beliefs. And so for those of you guys who follow me on our business podcast, The Digital Income Family, you'll know like where I'm going here. But ever since I learned this idea, it's transferred into any area of my life. And so the idea is that you can shift your beliefs because a lot of times, all the time actually, they are based off of experiences in your life. So if you analyze a belief, you can see if it's a lie, if it's rooted in reality, or if it's rooted in something that you skewed based off of your past experiences. And so what I mean by that is if you say to yourself, I absolutely need like, you know, some type of Yukon car, like some large car, like it's going to be miserable with the car that I currently have, but you know that you can't afford it, or you know that you should really wait. That's based off of a belief that you need a nicer car, you know? And so you can shift that to, you know, make it better serve you. So another maybe better example is I hear this all the time. I can't have another kid until I move out of this house. So I could have easily said that. Okay. Right now we're living in, not really, we have like 20, maybe 2,500 square feet. So it's not small, but we have only 2 bedrooms with beds and we have 3 kids. It sounds like I don't know. It sounds like we're insane, but we love the area and we're focused the last couple years on building our business versus being in a dream house, you know, to like look nicer. Like we don't care, you know, we care about financial freedom and putting the money into a business. So we've made the 2 beds work in our house. But if I had said to myself, I cannot have another kid until I move out of this house. Like, again, is that belief based off of like your experience, your, you know, something that you want to like have because of your identity? Like, what is that? And so for me, it's like, that's just a choice to believe that. Like, you definitely don't have to believe that. And so I've learned that you can have a bigger family no matter the circumstances. Obviously, there's some times, before you guys are jumping at me, there are some times that it might be better to wait, based off of like you and your spouse's agreements for certain circumstances, financial, whatever. But most of the time, I do believe now that God blesses you with what you can handle and you can make it work. Okay, so that is pretty much it for the 7 things I've changed my mind on since becoming a mom. There's so many other things, but definitely like, choosing like your beliefs and choosing like the path towards happiness. I think it's a choice. I don't think it's something that like things aren't happening to you. You have to take ownership for them. And that's like the biggest thing I've changed my mind on for sure. And it's still very hard for me even to this day. So anyways, I hope you guys got something from that. Thank you so much again for leaving reviews and for supporting the podcast. My goal for next month is to get my first guest on. So I'm excited about that. And yeah, I will see you in next week's. Bye guys.